Welcome to Thrivers Ed, the podcast that's all about giving you the practical, no-nonsense advice you need to level up your life and business. I'm your host, Marci Rossi, success coach, business strategist, and alcohol-free enthusiast. If you're ready to crush your goals, optimize your productivity, and live your best, most authentic life, then you're in the right place. Each week, we'll dive into topics like the psychology of success, practical strategies to boost your performance, and the unexpected ways living alcohol-free can elevate your life. Whether you're looking to boost your business, improve your health, or simply become a better version of yourself, Thrivers Ed is here to help you do just that. So grab your iced coffee, buckle up, and let's get thriving. Hello, my name is Marci Rossi, and I am the host of the Thrivers Ed podcast. I figured the best way to kick this off is just to tell you a little bit about me and my story so that you understand why I'm so passionate about the things that I plan on talking about in this podcast. I decided to name the podcast Thrivers Ed because I have always identified as that, high achiever, success-driven, really looking for accolades and accomplishments type of person. I wanted to be the best that I could in all things, both in my work and professionally. And I wanted to nail down some of the concrete strategies to get me there. But in order to do that, I had to make a lot of mistakes along the way. And I thought I would give you a little peek behind the curtain of what that looked like. So in school, I did really well. Academics came easy to me. Sports, maybe not so much, but school, I did fairly well. And I ended up getting into a scholarship at a university here in Dallas. And I graduated with honors from the business school there. I loved business and I had this dream of being a CEO, but I just didn't see how I could fit into that world. I had a very probably archaic example in my head of what a CEO looked like, and it just didn't feel like the right fit for me at that time. Not to mention, when I graduated, the economy was in a bit of a slump and it was really hard going trying to find a job. So I figured, okay, I'll just continue going to school and decide to pursue a law degree. I thought it was a perfect match for my personality. I'm very analytical. I love to argue and play the devil's advocate. So I thought it would be a really good fit for me. In that first semester of law school, I already knew that it wasn't right for me. In fact, I can vividly remember that I spent my birthday that first year, and my birthday's in September, so it would have been right around the time that school started, crying on the floor in the bathroom during one of my property law classes. And it wasn't because property law is enough to bore anyone to tears, although it is, but I just knew something was off, and I just didn't know what the next step for me was going to be. I'm also not a quitter though, and so I figured a law degree is better than one semester of law school and that the skills that I would develop would help translate into my future career. So I decided to stick with it. I ended up graduating and did become a licensed attorney, which involved spending an entire summer watching my friends and family in the pool while I studied all day long like it was my job, but did pass that bar exam and am a licensed attorney. And that also, like I said, didn't fit. I knew it didn't fit from the beginning and it never did click afterwards. I would say the part I felt most passionate about was actually representing victims of domestic violence. And I worked in a domestic violence clinic there, but it was too heavy for me. I felt like I wasn't strong enough to hold these stories because I was taking them very personally. I had a really hard time distancing myself from the trauma and pain that my clients were going through and not absorbing that in my own life at home. So I decided to leave that area and pursue something else. I ended up getting hired at a Big Four accounting firm, and I was doing fairly well there. I was promoted in the first 6 months at the job. I moved up fairly steadily there and was making a good amount of money, but I just wasn't happy. In fact, at one point, I was completely burnt out and ended up going into a hospital for some time for burnout. After taking some time to recover, I decided that it was going to be time for me to make another pivot shift. This was my body literally screaming to me that this was not the right path for me. Yes, I was making money. Yes, I was working for a firm that's very prestigious, and so I had that title behind my name, but I was not happy and it was not enough to sustain me when things started to get really hard. So I took a step back and tried to think about what are the things that I love, right? I love libraries. I have a whole host of library books on my bookshelves at any given moment. I love the idea of freedom of access and equity of access and just having information available to people. I think so often we're quick to judge, and that's because we just don't have the information behind it. And so making information available to people so that they can dive into topics and really have a clear idea of what it is that they believe, or even just for entertainment, to expand their knowledge, just to learn something new for fun. I think libraries are incredible. So I decided this was going to be my new path. I thought it aligned well too with my passion for justice and equity. And so I went into public libraries. And in public libraries, I was promoted 5 times in 5 years and ended with being the collections manager for a mid-sized library. And in that role, I was in the zone doing things that I was really good at, but not necessarily passionate about. My role basically involved me negotiating contracts and making all the purchasing decisions. And I am great with budgets. I am great with negotiating and getting good deals and making sure that we're making the best use of our resources. But there wasn't the passion behind it. And another problem was I felt very stifled, right? Libraries are fantastic, but they are still a function of local government. So there's a lot of politics and bureaucracy that I felt was really containing the change that I really wanted to affect. So the next step for me was actually something that I stumbled into, I will say. It was a result of a choice that I never imagined myself making. In all of those roles that I've mentioned, I decided, well, I guess I didn't decide, but I learned to manage my stress by drinking. I would have a glass of wine after work to kind of decompress and relax, and especially when I was stressed, alcohol was kind of that way to blow off steam. But really at no point was it what I would consider a quote unquote problem, right? I wasn't getting arrested. I didn't go to jail. I didn't have issues with my friends and family. Like I was, doing really well at work. Like I mentioned, I was still getting promoted and doing well in my careers, but I still couldn't stop drinking, right? I knew it was a problem when I tried to change my behavior and really, really struggled with it. It actually all started with a dry January. I love health. I love learning about the latest antioxidants and superfruits and just kind of taking care of your body and again, being the best, right? So I decided to do a dry January. I'd heard about it probably online. And I, as I want to do, went to the library, checked out all the books I could find on alcohol because I thought this is it. I'm just going to read about alcohol and I'm going to, not even want it for this month. It's going to be so easy. And that first month, I think I drank maybe 3 or 4 times. But, one of those times was a friend's birthday. And one of those times was just like a really hard day at work. And so I just deserved it, right? So those didn't count. And then I tried Dry January every year after that. And each time, if I even made it through, I was miserable. That one time I can remember actually going through all 31 days, I was counting down the days until February 1st. I probably had a countdown on my phone, like literally to the hour when I could drink again, right? Planning what that drink is going to be, just like trying to white knuckle it through, just 5 more days, 4 more days, 3 more days, right? Completely miserable. And honestly, this kind of scared me. I realized that alcohol had a lot of power over me. If I couldn't go 31 days without being miserable, it meant that I needed it. And I don't want to need anything, right? Like I'm a fiercely independent woman. I want to do it myself. Like, if we're building something from IKEA, like I'm going to take the tools from you. Like I got this, don't worry about it, right? But this was something that had power over me and it just didn't sit well with my control freak nature. So I needed to process this and decide where I was going to go from here. In considering my options, I knew of the 2 common ones that I'm sure you know of, AA and rehab. I didn't need to go to rehab. I obviously had just gone 31 days without drinking, so I've proved to myself that I could do this. It just wasn't very fun. It wasn't a very happy 31 days. And for AA, it just didn't sit right with me, right? One of the tenets of AA is kind of letting go and letting God. And I'm not a spiritual person, but even still, that letting go part I really struggled with, right? I wanted to do this. I didn't want to throw up my hands, say I was an alcoholic, and just be content with the fact that things are what they are and I just have to deal with it. I wasn't willing to accept that. I wasn't willing to accept that there was something fundamentally wrong with me that made me different from everybody else that seemed to be okay with alcohol, even if sometimes they overdid it, or even if they drank probably more often than they wanted to, or said they'd only have one and end up having two. There was something about me that was wrong if I was going to go down this path, and I couldn't accept that. So fortunately, through the magic that is meta ads, I was shown an ad for a woman who has a program that coaches people through alcohol use in order to change their relationship with alcohol. And so I can remember very vividly tearfully crying as I typed in my credit card number, because this was the biggest investment I had ever spent on myself at the time. And it's actually quite funny because I have spent 5 to 10 times more than that on programs and resources since. But at the time, it was huge for me, right? I was saying, I am going to spend all of this money on myself because I'm worth it. And I hadn't really been feeling like I was worth it for a really long time. It was also a big risk. I didn't know anything about coaching. It was going to be a group coaching program, which meant I would have to talk to strangers and tell them about my problems. And, I was never one for teamwork in school. I wanted to do it all. Of course, there's going to be some slacker or some show-off kid in there, right? And so I wasn't super jazzed about having to be there in the first place, but I didn't know what else I could do. And I am so glad that past me decided to spend that money on herself. I am so glad that I decided to try something new, something I didn't know was going to work, that I was actually fairly certain was not going to work, but to lean into it anyway, because that program honestly changed my life, changed the rest of my career. And it's something that the result is something I never imagined would happen, right? I did not go into that program intending to quit drinking forever. That was never the plan. Actually, the plan was that I was going to be drinking in the retirement home when I'm older, that people got to sneak drinks into me because I thought I loved drinking. And this program really opened my eyes to the fact that I honestly didn't. Everything I thought alcohol was doing for me, it wasn't. If it was making me happy, why was I so damn unhappy? If it was relieving my stress, why was I so stressed out that at times I wanted to crawl under my desk and hide, couldn't answer the phone, couldn't check emails because life was just too damn overwhelming? If it was doing all of these things for me, why wasn't it better, right? Like, I felt so blinded. And in that coaching program, when it helped to remove the blinders and see that maybe I'm not the problem, right? Maybe this poisonous substance is the problem. This substance that has been a known carcinogen since the year I was born, and I had no idea. This substance that we put in our cars to fuel our cars is the problem. It's silly now thinking about it that I couldn't put two and two together, that maybe the drug is the problem. But at the same time, that's how society treats it, right? If you have an alcohol abuse problem, you're an alcoholic. But if you smoke, you're not a cigarette-aholic, right? People don't blame the person that's smoking, they blame the cigarettes. They know nicotine is addictive, right? Be very careful if you're going to fall down that rabbit hole, because it's really hard to quit, if almost impossible. And yet when we look at alcohol, it gets its own special lens. And I can do a whole episode on kind of the issues that society really latches on to around alcohol. And I probably will, but that's a story for another day. We're talking about kind of how I ended up here. And so as a result of that program, within 3 months, I was so amazed at the incredible transformation that coaching had on my life that I decided that this is what I want to do. I want to help people see how much better it is on the other side. I want to help people change their lives in such a fundamental way that nothing is ever the same again, in the very best way. So after that program, just within a couple months of finishing that program, I turned in my resignation letter to the library and I started my own company, and it has been a crazy roller coaster ever since. I am absolutely certain I never would have done this if I was still drinking. I never would have ventured out and started my own company when I was drinking. When I was in university, I graduated from business school with honors, and I got into business school with an essay saying that I wanted to be a CEO when I grew up. And the thing about it was, I didn't see myself as creative enough to really build something up. I wanted to just kind of step into the role and help change what's already been built because I didn't believe in myself enough. I didn't think I was creative. I didn't think I had any good ideas. I thought I just needed to take over from someone else, something they've already built from the ground up, and I could improve it from there. But having quit drinking, having done something that I absolutely never imagined I would do, I have realized how much stronger I am, that I am in fact creative, and that I have the power and ability to build something from scratch. And it has been a crazy, fun, wild ride since. The initial focus in my company related to that alcohol-free journey because I wanted to help people who were like me, who thought they loved drinking and yet hated that they couldn't stop drinking, that they couldn't seem to get it under control, that they felt like everybody else had it all figured out and they were the only ones stumbling, and that didn't like the existing options out there for help. I wanted to offer what I didn't have, which was one-on-one coaching for women to help them change their relationship with alcohol. And that's what I started off with. I actually still have that, but that's not the primary focus that I have right now. What I decided to do is evolve. As we start to dive into our businesses deeper, we start to figure out what it is that really excites us, what we really love talking about. And as much as I love talking about alcohol-free life, I could not stop talking about my business. I wanted to learn all of the things. I wanted to learn about marketing and brand development and community engagement and lead generation and really all of these pieces. I could not get enough of it. And as a person who really loves to make everything as efficient as possible, this was a real big challenge for me in the best way, right? I got to try something and then try something again and try something again and keep learning and improving. And I feel like I have so much growth to share with people to save them all of the missteps that I made. So taking that passion that I had for business, I have made a shift in my focus. I am now focusing on helping small business owners who are really passionate about what they do, but maybe not so much that business side, figure out the strategies that work, right? I am about the strategies. In looking at different options and trainings and stuff out there, I found that so much is focused on what I would call the fluff, right? It's either the woo or the fluff. Those are the two options out there. The woo being, manifestation and calling in your inner goddess and just things that don't really, they're just not my cup of tea. Some people are really passionate about human design and this sort of thing. It's just not for me. I want to know what to do. Like, tell me what to do. There are other coaches, and I was actually just recently introduced to a new coach in this sphere, and I've been listening to her stuff. And while I'm attracted to some element of her teachings because it is so fundamentally different to what I'm all about, and I think that's really important, right? If I put blinders on and only followed people who were exactly like me, I think I would really be limiting my growth. But in listening to her stuff, she's positioning her offers as kind of these answers to, maybe sales or getting new clients or creating this business, what have you. And her stuff is very theoretical. It is not the tactical tips, right? It's getting into the mindset, and mindset is important. Absolutely. I'll have a whole nother episode on mindset, I'm sure. But in doing the mindset, it's like, but how do I do it, right? It's the how. A lot of when you listen to webinar strategies, they'll tell you to teach the why and not the how. The how is actually working with that person. But even with a lot of coaches, even in their paid offers, what I've seen is just that how is missing. They help you understand what it is you want, and maybe they provide accountability, but they're not giving you the step by step. So that is what I hope to accomplish with this podcast. That's what I work on with all of my clients. I want people to leave when they're working with me or listening to me to know, what do I do next? So that is why this podcast is here. That is what I am focused on and what I hope to provide for you. I have a whole bunch of ideas for different topics that are going to be coming up. But the premise is tactical, real life strategies to improve. Now, these are going to cover topics in business and in health and all these areas that I'm really passionate about. So these are going to be in business, in health, and in alcohol-free living, because quitting alcohol truly has changed so many aspects of my life that it was woven into each of these things. How you show up in business when you're not drinking is completely different than when you are. How you show up in your life when you're drinking is completely different than when you're not, right? It changes who you are, how you react, how you behave in situations when you're drinking, even when you're not drunk, because of what it is doing to your thoughts and beliefs about yourself and what you really need. It impacts all areas of your life. But that is for another day. Just wanted to share a bit about my story. If you take anything away from this, I hope it's this. One, if you're struggling with alcohol, it's not you, it's the damn drug. And if you need help, there are options out there. It doesn't have to be AA, it doesn't have to be rehab. They're great for the people that they work for, but they don't work for everyone. So if you're struggling and you need support, I know of a bunch of different ways that you can do that, so feel free to reach out to me. The other thing is that it's okay to grow and evolve. I have had so many different careers, and I can't for certain say that this career path, being the CEO of my own business, is what I'm going to do for the rest of my life. But I can tell you, it has never felt like this. I have changed so much in my life. With each career path I chose, I was trying to access some part of my personality that I thought would fit in there, but it wasn't encompassing the whole thing. There was always a piece that's missing, and I'm grateful that I decided not to settle. I'm grateful that I had first of all, the ability to make these changes, but to also not be willing to settle for something when something was clearly missing. That's what I was doing with alcohol. I was settling. I was settling for a life that I didn't fully, truly love. I was trying to numb that frustration that I felt in each of those positions when I just wasn't fully passionate about what I was doing, and I just got sick of it. I just decided to stop settling. So if you are ready to stop settling, if you are ready to learn how to live your biggest, best life, and you want the exact steps to get you there, this is the podcast for you, and I hope to see you next week.